Hey there, fabulous people. Welcome back to the Do.Different.Better Show, where we talk about wealth, wisdom, and money moves, making finance simple for everyday people. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, founder and CEO of Social Impact Now, Connective Institute, and managing partner of the Integrated Capital Fund. Thank you for joining me today. In our last episode, we talked about kids and cash, teaching financial literacy to children and how important it is to teach them all about money and really introducing them on that journey around wealth education. But it's really great to do this even when you're not so great at it. But starting the journey with your kids is a great way for you to learn together and get what maybe you never got. But today, we're diving into the exciting world of real estate investing. Whether you're a first-time investor or you're looking to expand your portfolio, this segment is going to give you a really good, solid foundation. I'm going to break down the basics of real estate investing, covering different types of properties, key concepts like rental income, appreciation and cash flow, but also some ways to identify what are some great investment opportunities. I'll also walk you through some of my own real estate investing mistakes and some common pitfalls in real estate investing. But I'm also going to give you some really good successful tips, right? But by educating yourself and building a really good team, we'll talk about the practical tips of how to evaluate properties and really gain some actionable advice to kickstart your journey. So let's get into it. So first, real estate investing involves purchasing properties. It is called real estate, but the purpose is to generate income or appreciate in value versus you're buying a home so that you can live in it. Maybe it will be more cost effective for you to buy a home than continue renting, or you want to leave something to your kids. But when you're buying real estate for investing, you're really bringing on a completely different set of glasses, a completely different set of lens of how you're going to be looking at this property. But it's a really popular way to build wealth and financial security and stability. But what does all of that actually mean? Let's go ahead and break it down. Real estate, and there are different kinds of real estate properties, right? So there are what are called single family homes, apartments, and condos. And then there's all kinds of other things like you can just buy land or manufactured homes. But we're really going to talk about some of the first ones that I talked about. So single family homes, apartments, and condos, right? These are the easiest to get into for beginners and the easiest to manage and the easiest to understand. So when you get into some of these other sorts of real estate investments, the more complicated they get. So we're just going to start with the beginner's journey today, right? There's also things like commercial properties. These would be office buildings, retail spaces, or shopping centers. They often require a lot of capital and a lot of management, but they can yield often higher returns. A lot of times commercial properties, you'll bring in partners. So, and we'll talk about investment clubs. We've talked about investment clubs in a previous episode, but that's one way to collectively buy in to purchase a larger piece of commercial property. Those properties can be up in the millions of dollars. And so making sure that you're able to handle that risk is important. Then there's also industrial properties like warehouses, factories, distribution centers. These properties can provide stable long-term income, but often require some very specialized knowledge because they have some special rules and zoning requirements that may be with your city, county, or state. But it's really important to understand the different types of real estate investments because it's going to help you decide where you want to get started depending on what your goals are and your experience level. So let's talk about some basic concepts around real estate investments. So the first one is rental income. This is the money that you actually earn from renting out your property, whether it's a duplex, a triplex, a condo, but because of that, it can offer you some steady cash flow and help you cover the mortgage and other expenses. So expenses like a roof, or maybe some flooring needs to be done. It could be the ongoing exterior maintenance, and the money that you make from the rental income could actually help support, if not cover, all of that. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Then there's appreciation. So appreciation means that over time, the property's value will increase. That's always the hope. And more often than not, that is the case. It's not too often that you hold a property and the value decreases unless there's been some really major damage. And so there's ways to work around that. We may or may not get into that in this episode today. But the whole idea is that you hold on to the property a lot longer, then it could be worth more than what you bought it for when you decide to sell. There's lots of people who buy properties like parking lots and they just hold on to them, or even empty buildings. Maybe they're getting a tax break because they're taking a loss because they're not getting any rental income. And once again, that's a whole nother level of complicated financing that you want to talk to your accountant about what is the best thing to you. But today we're going to still just keep it really simple. So these three concepts, rental income, appreciation, and cash flow, these are the building blocks of real estate investment. So you really want to understand those things. And as you think about wanting to invest in real estate, or maybe you've bought properties and you've never really thought about these questions, this is a really good time to really use these as your baseline of what do I want to do? What do I need to do to make sure that this property sort of takes care of itself, or that you're on a pathway for this property to financially support itself. So now let's talk about what are some of the opportunities in real estate. Real estate offers several opportunities for investors, and here are some key benefits. One, you get to earn income for generations. If you hold on to that property and you leave it to your family or children, that money, eventually that property gets paid off, very similar to your own home mortgage. And then it's just cash flow, right, coming in. But this income can help cover the mortgage and the property taxes, but also potentially provide you with profit. Once again, if you hold on to it long enough, let's say you have a 15-year mortgage on a commercial property or a duplex, as opposed to a 20 or 30 or 40-year mortgage. Does anybody do 40-year mortgages anymore? I don't know. But once that's paid off, all of that money now just needs to cover expenses like insurance and maintaining the property. But the rest is going to be all cash. So here's a concrete example. If you own a duplex and rent out both units, the rental income from the tenants could cover the property's mortgage and still leave you with an extra cash. I think I talked about this in a previous episode. I have a friend of mine who got a smoking deal on a duplex here in town. And actually he's living in the top unit. The bottom unit has a good army buddy of his, and that his mortgage is $1,300. The rent that the lower unit is paying is $1,100 or $1,200. So as far as he's concerned, he's paying $100 in rent because he just has to cover that difference between what his tenant is paying and what he actually owes on the mortgage, right? Number two, appreciation. Here's an example. So once again, what did we say appreciation was? Appreciation values tend to increase over time. This means that the investment can grow in value, providing you with a significant return when you decide to sell. So let's just say you buy a property for $200,000, and in 10 years, the value increases to $300,000. That's now $100,000, an increase in your net worth. It's also called $100,000 in equity, right? So you might hear that term equity. That means that what is the difference between what it's valued at and what you owe? The difference is what's called equity. You could actually take that $100,000 from our previous example and go buy another property if you wanted to. You'd borrow against the first property to take out the $100,000 to then go buy another property. This is a very common practice with investors. But there's also some really great tax benefits. Real estate investors can benefit from various tax deductions, including mortgage interest, property taxes, and depreciation. If you're earning $10,000 in rental income but you have $8,000 in deductible expenses, you only pay taxes on the remaining $2,000. So many of us on our mortgage, we might be, or we on any kind of capital gains. Let's say you are you buy stock and you sell it, and that stock is now worth more money. You pay what are called capital gains. So you're paying taxes on that full amount. The great thing about real estate investing, as I just demonstrated, is if you have the expenses that are related to maintaining that property, many of those expenses are deductible. So you're really only paying tax on the difference between what you spent in deductible expenses and the income that you earn from that particular property. So it's a great tool to reduce the amount of taxes, especially if you already own an existing property. Once again, definitely want to consult with a tax professional. They can walk you through all the ins and outs of that. So once again, these opportunities make real estate a very powerful tool for wealth building. But how do you get started? Well, I'm going to talk about some really tactical and practical steps. So here's how you want to get started. I have a really good friend of mine locally. He's a major real estate developer. One of the things that he's talking about is like find an area, right? So researching local real estate markets and finding one that you want to go deep on. Really finding one that is, I always say when I'm thinking about purchasing a real estate investment, I think about, I want to be able to drive by that investment. So I'm not in my portfolio, I have a tendency to want to stay very hyper local to my sphere of influence, or my sphere of where I travel and live, work, and play, right? What's nice about that is if you're able to drive by it, you're able to see things that, oh, that needs to be taken care of before it actually turns into a bigger problem. I did have a property that was probably about, I would say it was outside of my sphere of where I live, work, and play. And I hated that property. I hated going there every single time. I would delay going there. I would procrastinate going over there. I would do anything. I would put everything and anything ahead of actually having to go out there and do things that I actually had to do, because it was so, from my vantage point, far away. Now, in practicalities, it was about 20, 25 minutes away, but it was in an area that had really bad traffic during the peak hours, rush hour traffic. So I always had to rearrange my schedule to go out there. It just wasn't convenient. And so from there, I decided I always want to buy properties that are in this places and spaces where I live, work, and play, where I can drive by the property at any time, or even more so on my way to my office. If I can see that property, or with very few shortcuts, be able to drive by that property. Once again, it's not for you to harass the people who live there, who are your tenants. The whole idea is oh, those weeds are getting really high. Let them know that it's time to mow the weeds, or let me call my gardener or whatever to be able, or me. For a long time, I was the property manager and maintainer. I would fix things at all of my properties because it just didn't make sense for me to hire a property manager at that point. What I'd be paying them versus what it cost me, since it was very infrequent that I had to do it. But I had multiple properties. So going to this one property that was outside of all of my sphere of live, work, and play was just obnoxious. I couldn't stand it. So that's one tip I can give you. But really the first step is to research local real estate markets. So whether it's your backyard or an adjacent backyard or an up and coming area, you really want to understand the property values and what are the rental rates. A really good way to look at some of the rental rates is just looking on Zillow, Realtor.com, or Apartments.com to see what are some of the rents that are being charged for that particular area. But doing this will help you identify what's going to be a good investment opportunity for you. Once again, what's good for you is not necessarily good for someone else, right? So one man's trash is another man's treasure. So it's really important for you to start thinking about, where and what you want to invest. What kind of investment do you want to make? Do you want to do a single family home? Do you want to do a duplex or a triplex? Also thinking about how much money do you have to invest? All of those things will help you determine what is the best pace for you to start. But the other tip that I would definitely encourage you to do is to start small. Start with a duplex. I started with multiple single family homes. And while it was, I learned a lot, and they were good investment opportunities. One of the things when people ask me, Elaine, what would you do different? I would not have bought single family homes. I also bought right before the market crashed. So maybe that has influenced my decision, but I definitely have told my kids to buy duplexes or what are called multi-family units. So a duplex, a triplex, or an apartment building, those are called multi-family units. So that would be my thing, is to, if this is your first investment, you're new to this, buying a duplex, if that's in your price range. If it's not, maybe it is a single family home. Maybe it's a small single family home and that you rent out to a single person. But really, once again, looking at the market and what is it you're trying to do, right? I think that's going to be really, really important. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But starting small with a single family home or a duplex is a really great way to dip your toe in the water, get some experience. And if it's not for you, you can sell that property. But these types of properties are far more easy to manage, and they can really give you a good introduction to real estate investing. Look for, I always like to look for properties where there's bus transportation, there are schools, and where there are grocery stores. Those are the tips that, at least for me, when I'm looking at properties, because what I don't want to have happen is I don't want my tenant to not be able to get to work. Because if they're in a place where they can't get to work, then they won't be able to pay their rent. So I definitely like to buy properties that are near some kind of transportation, whether it's a bus line, whether it's a metro stop, some kind of transportation. But once again, I also like to look at areas where there are schools, where there are families, because those tend to be working class people. And for my money, working class people make the best tenants. They're just amazing. So I like to buy properties where there are working class people and be able to provide affordable rents to working class people. So just a quick fun fact, Mike, did you know that real estate has created 90% of the world's millionaires? Once again, it's a powerful tool for building wealth. But once again, start by doing your research. Start small. You can take advantage of that way you can start to begin to take advantage of real estate offers that come into your space once you kind of get a better understanding of all those. But also, just another fun fact, in many cultures, owning land is seen as a mark of success or stability. It's not just about the money, but it's about legacy and community. For example, in the African American communities, owning a home has been a very strong symbol of economic stability and generational wealth. So, as we wrap up this segment in real estate and beginning the real estate investing journey, once again, I can't stress enough, it really requires research and it requires planning. If you are not an organized person, managing a property is not the thing for you. Either hire it out or have a investment partner, whatever your skills are. Maybe you're handy, but you're not good with managing finances. Find a partner or collaborator. Maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's a sibling, but really be honest about what are your skills and assets, and that what are going to be the things that are going to lend themselves well to managing, purchasing, but also then managing the property. And try to find somebody, whether it's that they are co-invested in you, maybe they're putting in sweat equity because they're going to do some of that work for you. I don't know, but definitely make sure that you are really clear about who you are, what you are, how you show up, because those are all going to be valuable things. And if you're not clear about those things, you could really find yourself in a lot of trouble. And I don't want that to happen to you. But once again, real estate investing requires research, planning, and a willingness to continuously learn. But the rewards are amazing. While I've had some good times and bad times with properties, I have valued all the lessons, good, bad, and the ugly, that I have learned, that have been gone and through the process. I've learned so much, not only about myself, but about this field called real estate investing. So, that's it for this segment on the Do Different Better Show. Stay with us as we go into break, but come on back and join us as we really dive into what are some of the common pitfalls within real estate investing in our next segment. I will see you after the break. Hey there, fabulous people. Welcome back to the Do Different Better Show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. And in this segment, we're going to do an exploration around the pitfalls of real estate investing. While investing has its perks, there are also some challenges that you need to be aware of. So let's dive in. As I mentioned in the previous segment, real estate investing can be super, super rewarding. I've really loved all of it. And it hasn't been always great, but I really, really love the journey. It's been painful. Some days it felt like I was floating through, sliding down sandpaper. But when I look at the totality of the experience, it's been a really great ride. It's really important for you as you go through this journey is to go in with your eyes wide open. So I'm going to talk about what are some pitfalls that you need to watch out for. So one is high upfront costs. Purchasing a property often requires a significant amount of upfront money for down payment, closing costs, and repairs. These can be a major barrier for many prospective investors. So always think about it's always going to take longer than you think if you think you're going to be doing some renovations, and it's always going to cost more than you think, right? And when you're thinking about the down payment, I'm going to give you an example so you can kind of understand what kind of money we're talking about. If you're buying a $200,000 property, you might need $40,000 for a 20% down payment, plus several thousand more dollars for closing costs, meaning getting the realtors paid, your escrow process, all of those things, as well as maybe any initial repairs, unless you're buying a property that's called turnkey, meaning you walk in, there's nothing to do with the property. Now, when you buy a turnkey property, the price is usually going to reflect that, right? So a turnkey property might be $400,000, whereas a property that needs a little TLC might be $250,000. So these are some of the trade-offs you want to think about of like, one, can I put down this down payment of 20%, or I actually need to go with a lower price property and maybe put in a little bit of more elbow grease or what's called sweat equity. Now, there are lots of home improvement programs with municipalities. There are also lots of programs for first-time home buyers. Many states, you qualify as a first-time home buyer 3 years after you've purchased a property. So let's say you've owned your home for 5 or 10 or 20 years. You actually could go and qualify for many of these programs as what's called a first-time home buyer because you have not bought a home within 3 years. So once again, check your local programs, check the qualifications of what they qualify as a new home buyer. But a lot of times as an investor, you can start your journey there by qualifying as a first-time home buyer and getting some of those benefits of those programs. Now, number 2, maintenance and management. Properties need regular maintenance. And if you're currently living in an apartment and you're thinking about before you buy a home, you're going to buy a real estate investment property, there are all the things that you don't have to take care of now that you're going to have to take care of, whether it's you taking care of it or whether it is you're going to pay somebody to take care of it. But once again, properties need regular management, and also dealing with tenants can be challenging. I've had to go to court several times to get unpaid rent from my tenants, and that's a whole process in itself. But there's also unexpected repairs, but these things can rack up very quickly and can be very, very overwhelming. So if you're the kind of person that doesn't like change, if you're the person who doesn't like conflict, this is where you might want to get a partner. If they have no problems, I have no problem knocking on somebody's door and asking for rent. If that's not you, either you may not want to get into this, or you might want to bring on a partner who that's maybe their strength. But things like you're going to have to fix a leaky roof, you're going to have to replace broken appliances unless they bring their own appliances, and once again, you have to handle late rent. These responsibilities, they require time and effort and sometimes money. When you go to go to court to get your rent money, depending on where you are, that can be anywhere from $300 to $600. So once again, these are all the things you want to consider. The last thing that I want you to consider in the pitfalls of real estate investing is just market fluctuations. I shared with you earlier, I bought multiple properties in 2006. The housing market crashed in 2008. And the ironic thing about all of this was when I was purchasing this process, very similar. If you haven't seen The Big Short, it's a great movie. It talks about the whole housing crash. Why? Because I had this finance and background, I had some of the same similar questions in my mind of thinking as I was buying these properties, this isn't a sustainable system. There's no possible way that this is a sustainable system. And I kept buying properties, and obviously not only I, but some of the other experts that are outlined in that movie were correct. It wasn't, and this collapsed on itself. So, and as a result of that, I lost many of those properties. We just were upside down in them as far as we owed more than what they were actually worth. But once again, that's an example of property values going down due to external markets. But rental markets can also become saturated, right? If there's all these new apartments going up and they're brand new, people may not want your duplex that's a little bit older, doesn't have all the amenities, it doesn't have a pool. And so that could actually impact your ability to not only get a rent that will cover your mortgage, but also be able to keep tenants in the property, right? So once again, you want to think about, can I withstand some of the things like an economic hit that happens either locally or nationally, if the property values drop, or if you struggle to find tenants, will you be able to cover all of the costs like the mortgage and the maintenance of the property while you weather those storms? Being aware of these pitfalls is the first step to avoiding them. Now let's look at maybe some things that have happened in history that have demonstrated that investing in homes isn't a problem. Redlining has been a discriminatory practice where banks denied mortgages to people of color, particular African Americans, based on their race. And so those long-standing effects have now impacted not only home ownership rates, but wealth accumulation, to how not only Black homes are valued even when they're appraised. So you'll often hear sometimes that Black folks will actually get one of their white friends to be in their homes. They'll remove the pictures because there's been demonstrated research that says that when the home is owned by a white person, the evaluation of the home or the valuation of the home, it tends to be documented as 20 to 30% higher. So unfortunately, some of these practices are not knowingly. I think a lot of people don't. It's what we call implicit bias, right? I don't think people are, building inspectors are going around saying, I'm going to downgrade the value of this home because it has a Black owner. I don't think many of us are thinking that that's happening. However, it is happening. And we see data over and over and over again, how a house gets valued at one price when it's perceived to be owned by a white person versus how that house is, the value of that house is perceived when it is clearly owned by a Black person. So these are all the things that we want to work on, particularly whether you're on the investment side and thinking about, how will my property be valued? But also when you're thinking about buying, right, are some of these biases showing up in how you're evaluating a property? There's a really great resource called the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. It offers lots of great resources to you to answer questions that you may have, but also the greatest resource is contacting local real estate and realtors. They will be able to tell you what's going on in the market. They'll be able to tell you where you might want to buy into, what you might want to watch out for, but really understanding the historical context and cultural context of any of the places that you're thinking of investing, the location that you're looking to invest in, it's going to be really, really important. You also don't want to be that person in the community, right? You don't want to be that person on the block that nobody wants you there as a developer. It can just really make your life really, really miserable. If you've seen any protests on television, those are some of the results that you're going to see. But here, I'm going to talk about the tactical and practical steps to avoid some of these pitfalls that I just talked about. One, creating a budget, right? Really understanding the budget of what it's going to cost to maintain that property. To maintain that property including closing costs, repairs, maintenance, management fees, but also having a contingency fund for unexpected expenses. One thing spreadsheets are my love language. I talk about spreadsheets all the time. Put it all down on a spreadsheet. It allows you to be able to create scenarios of like, well, what if this happened? What would happen to my bottom line? If this happened, well, if I went without rent for 3 months, what would that look like over time? The second thing is consider hiring a property manager. Managing a property can be time consuming and stressful. If you're the kind of person who travels a lot for work, hiring a property manager might be the best thing. That property manager could be a company that does that. It could be a colleague, or it could be, I actually did that for some friends of mine because I was really good at managing my properties. So I had a couple of friends of mine hire me, and I would charge them a reasonable rate to be able to manage their properties. But it's a great way to have somebody else handle the day-to-day operations, like, hey, my washing machine broke down. I need you to come and fix it. Or there's a leak that's happening with the kitchen faucet, right? While this can add to your expenses, it can save you time and stress, particularly if you own lots of properties or you live far from your investment. And then finally, it's really important to network. Network and learn with other real estate investors. Go to meetups, listen to podcasts, attend workshops, join an investing group or visit an investing group. Learn from other people's successes and mistakes. So by creating a very solid budget, by considering a professional management property, and continuously learning from others, it's going to be really easy for you to avoid a lot of these pitfalls that make you a more informed real estate investor. And actually, it's going to just make the journey so much more pleasant for you. So that's it for this segment on pitfalls of real estate investing. Stay tuned in the next segment as we discuss what are some of the successful real estate investing things that you can do. Thanks for tuning in. I will see you after the break. Hey there, fabulous financiers. Welcome back to Do Different Better. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. And in this segment, we're going to explore steps to successful real estate investing. From research and education to building a team, we'll cover what you need to know to start that journey. So let's get into it. The first step to successful real estate investing is educating yourself. And I know we've talked a lot about that during the show, but knowledge is power. And the more you know, the better decisions you can make. Now, I want to be clear, perfection is not the goal, right? You are never going to know all the things that you might want to know or even need to know. Once again, real estate investing, as any investing, it is a lot of calculated guesses. And if you are not comfortable, if you're one of those folks who has to like dot every I and cross every T, real estate investing might just be a very anxiety producing experience for you, which may not be the great for your mental health, because it is a lot of ambiguity and it's a lot of things that are changing constantly, not only internally with your tenant or your property and things, and constantly having to react to those things, but also externally. Maybe there's been a zoning change. Maybe there's been a violation and you're going to be cited by the city or your municipality. There's always something happening. And if that is anxiety producing for you, you may want to think about real estate investing, either letting somebody else do it for you or creating some sort of coping mechanisms, right? But one thing that you can do as far as getting yourself better educated, taking online courses. As I said, there are some great influencers that are on YouTube that are actually really, really good that you can start watching to be able to learn. But once again, a lot of those folks are going to be talking from the context of where they live. So you want to be mindful of that. They might be giving you great advice, but remember that context of that advice may be geographic located. And it's also going to be a lot of times that advice is focused from their perspective, right? Their financial capability, all of their assets that they have at their disposal. So once again, if you're just starting out, be mindful, you're not necessarily going to be able to do some of the things that some of these folks are talking about. But there are some great websites like Udemy, Coursera, local community colleges. But once again, I think these investment groups or real estate investing meetups are also like learn from people who've done it and learn from people who've done it in the geographic location where you already are. Once again, I've talked about the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. There's also The Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller. These books offer valuable insights and strategies from successful investors. But once again, education is going to be an ongoing process. It's not a one and done. Even now, having had multiple properties, I'm still learning because things are always changing as well. So you constantly have to be on this learning journey. But even experienced investors continue to learn and adapt to new markets. But the key is stay curious and keep learning. As you start to get more and more, a lot of successful investors start to have a team around them. And each team has a particular job. It might be some person's job to source. It might be another person's job to project manage. When you watch HGTV, you'll see that it'll be somebody's job to project manage the site, whether it is to get it on the market. Maybe they have a specific realtor that a couple of realtors. They'll have a couple of companies, whether they be construction companies that they always work with, or maybe it might be their company that they've bought. That's a lot of times what you'll do. But let's talk about some of the key team members you'll need. You'll definitely want a real estate agent. And you can have more than one, right? Once again, if we talk about geography, real estate agents typically work in a geography. So if you're looking at a couple of different geographies, then have a couple of different realtors that are going to work in those different geographies. But you want to find somebody who is a good negotiator, can find these properties, and really give you some valuable market insight. So maybe somebody who's doing it as a side hustle may not be the person you want. They just may not be as invested as you are. And you need somebody who this is what they're going to be doing all the time. Definitely looking for somebody with experience, or I like hiring somebody who's new-ish to the field, but they're hungry, right? That means they want to do a good job, which means they want to make sure they do a good job for me. But the whole idea is that they're going out there really understanding the market and what's going to be a good investment based on your goals and priorities and resources. The second thing you're going to need is a great mortgage broker. And once again, you can have one or two and they all have different programs. So a mortgage broker for this company and a mortgage broker for company B, they might have a different program. So you want to have a couple of different options. Say, okay, this is the property. Who's going to give me the best deal? And they're going to come up with the best financing options to help you secure a loan that's going to give you really great terms, right? But don't settle for the first offer that you receive. Once again, just like you would shop insurance, you should shop your mortgage for your prospective mortgage for the investment property. The last person that's really going to be key to your team is an attorney and an accountant, right? So want to make sure that you ensure that your investments are really legally sound and financially optimized by working with an attorney and an accountant. They can help you navigate any legal issues and maximize the tax benefits. So when we talk about legal issues, definitely having somebody who is a tenant or housing person, a lawyer, they're going to be able to help to tell you, like, when can you actually evict somebody? What are the circumstances in which you can do that? They'll be able to review your leases and make sure that your leases are legal, but also make sure that you are able to have your tenants adhere to those. What are things that you can and can't do as far as making sure that your tenants are compliant to what's in your lease agreement, right? Building a strong team is really, really going to help you have long-term success with pursuing real estate investment. Even if you're going to just be wanting to build a portfolio of 2 or a portfolio of 20 or a portfolio of 200, really having a good team is that are trustworthy and knowledgeable to support you in your goals is going to be important. So now let's just get into some practical and tactical steps. So action step number 1. Like I mentioned before, network with other real estate investors. I cannot tell you enough. Real estate investors, for the most part, they're willing to share their information and knowledge. If they're not somebody you want to work with anyway, right? Who wants to work with somebody who's a jerk? I don't. But once again, joining local investment clubs, going into online forums to connect with like-minded folks, right? There's some online platforms that are like Bigger Pockets that connect investors to help them learn from each other's experiences. And it's just a great way to find mentors. I have a real estate mentor. My son has a real estate mentor. And we don't bug this person. We probably call them maybe like once every 2 or 3 months and be like, hey, like I got a set of questions for you. I try to group my questions for them because I know that their time is really, really valuable and I don't want to waste their time. So I try to be mindful and be like, I try to get in a few different questions and I pile them up one before I talk to my real estate mentor. But also what you can start doing is start evaluating properties in the area. Start taking steps, like pretend like you're going to make a purchase and then see like what would happen, right? I think that's also a really great way to just kind of create a scenario and think about, okay, if I were to purchase this home that I found on Zillow, what might be some of the expenses? What would happen if I went without rent for 2 or 6 months? I once went without rent getting paid for 9 months while I was taking this person to court. So these are some of the very real things that you're going to have to deal with. But when you run the numbers, then you can see if it's really a good fit. Once again, creating a checklist. I have so many checklists. I have templates. I have so many things that I've developed over the years, but creating a checklist of key metrics to evaluate your properties, such as what's the price that you want to go for, what's the rental income that you need to maintain, whether it's a percentage or it's an actual number, and what might be some of the expected expenses, right? By taking these tactical and practical steps, you'll be well on your way to building a successful real estate portfolio. So, just again, to recap, I'll just tell you some of the things that I've learned when I have did my properties. I'll tell you some of my horror stories. I had one tenant. We went into court. They had owed me, I think, 3 months back rent. When I went to clean up the property, there was so much stuff in the house. It was 2 12-foot long trucks. I rented a U-Haul, a 12-foot U-Haul. I filled it up twice, and we still had stuff in the home. I cleaned out the house, and by the time we came to court, this person had said that they had left the house clean. They brought their preacher, they brought their mom to say that they had left the property clean and that we had a mold problem, which we didn't have a mold problem. So these are all the things. I mean, having to go to court, I was in court for 3 or 4 hours. I mean, these are all the things that now I lost that case, but let me tell you how I lost that case. The judgment was for the tenant, but the damages were $1. So in my perspective, I won. And actually, that's the only case that I've lost. I've had to go to court 4 or 5 times with tenants. I've won every time on paper except for that one. But once again, I still look at it as a win. My punitive damage was $1, so that's a win. And she had to move out. She wasn't moving out. And well, actually, I think she had moved out, but she had all this stuff that was just left over. There was food left over. There was furniture left over. She ran a small theater, or she worked at a small theater. There was this 14-foot piece of staging that was in the house that I had to break down and get rid of. So that's all time that you have to take away from your job or your life. So you really want to think about what's the worst case scenario and can I bear that really bad scenario? So this wraps up another episode of Do Different Better. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. Today, we talked about the exciting world of real estate investing, where whether you're a first-time investor looking to expand or you are really thinking about wanting to know the basics of real estate investing, I shared a lot of my own mistakes and common pitfalls in real estate investing. But I also offered you some really great tips to get started, from educating yourself and building a good team all the way to creating a network around yourself. And I hope all of this has been really valuable advice for you to kickstart your journey. I cannot wait for next week's conversation. Join me in the next episode where we continue your wealth education journey. See you next time, and we'll show you how to do different better. Let me know what you think of the show. We'd love to know your comments. Tell us how this show has helped you. If there's a money or finance question you have, or if there's someone you want me to interview, hit me up on LinkedIn or Instagram. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And I can't wait to see you next week when we do different better.